Hello, my name is Robert from Iceland. I'm from the nonprofit Citizens Foundation, and today I want to tell you a little bit about our work in developing citizen engagement solution, how we can look at ways to bring democracy to the 21st century. And the foundation is 14 years old, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our work. So Iceland has a pretty old history of democratic experiments, being sort of a Viking country. We founded one of the world's oldest parliament that is still running in the year 930, and there's been more or less continuous sort of democracy up to a point in Iceland all the way since then. And about 100 years ago, citizens could go and vote every 4 years for the representative, just like today. And they would go often on horseback, or even they would go and even walk. Some people walked for 2 days to get to the voting place. And they would often meet their representatives even in the street. And there was not a lot of people living in Iceland at the time, and there was more closeness, I guess, with the people who were going into parliament, and then time sort of flies. The car becomes popular in the 30s in Iceland, and technology, like everywhere, we have the first computers in the 60s, and access to the web and the internet opened in 1993. And that's actually where I started with my sort of entrepreneurial projects. I started the first internet company in Iceland in 1993, and the first internet company in Denmark in 1995. And but through this whole big technological evolution, which also includes mobile phones and social media, and now AI more and more, our democratic system hasn't evolved very much. We're still voting every 4 years. And in 2008, the financial crisis hit. And it hit many places pretty badly. But it hit Iceland uniquely in a very dramatic way, because Iceland is very small. And the Icelandic government had sort of been supporting building up a big financial sector in Iceland. So we had like a financial sector that was like 11 times the GDP of the whole country. So it was like a huge balloon, much bigger than the whole system of Iceland. And it all came tumbling down. Just in a matter of 3 days, no, in 10 days, all 3 commercial banks went bankrupt. I remember my grandfather calling me, and he was at the bank, and he was like with a black garbage bag, and he was going to get all his money out. I mean, he's a former taxi driver. He didn't have a lot of money, but he still wanted to get it out. He couldn't. People were afraid that, the ATMs wouldn't work. They wouldn't be able to get that. All the money for everybody was gone. And so people in the country really took to the streets, and with a very sort of strong message of, how could you have let this happen? How could you have sort of let us down in this way? Because, for many reasons. And so this is actually where we start our work. And as a civil society organization, basically with the idea of how can we use the internet to connect citizens and governments together with the aim of taking better decisions, to improving decision making, making it less likely that we'll have a rerun of the fiasco of the financial crisis. And we built open source digital democracy infrastructure that governments around the world and public sector use to connect the citizens. And our goal, obviously, democracy is one of our key goals, but more practically, we want to improve decision making and make government decisions and democratic decisions be up to speed of a world that's really, really moving very fast, with technology specifically. And we have a small office in Iceland, and we have a tiny office in the United States, Citizens Foundation here in Iceland, and then Citizens Foundation America in the United States. I mean, we call those offices, but those are actually two absolutely separate nonprofits. And our platforms and solution have been used in thousands of projects in 45 countries so far. Some of our key partners include City of Reykjavik, Scottish Parliament, City of Vienna, and many, many others. We have many open source solutions that we develop. And open source means that anybody can use the software, anybody can change the software, and it's very good as a democratic, sort of method of developing digital democracy, because we want our new digitally transformed democracy to be public and publicly owned. That's really important in terms of how do we increase trust in democracy, and our belief is that it should be as much publicly owned, and open source is a great solution for that. It means that anybody can review the source code if it's a voting system, whatever. And we have your priorities is sort of our main solution, which is all about idea generation and then having a thoughtful deliberation about policies. And I will focus on your priorities in this presentation, but we also have open active voting, which is like a gamified budget voting civic education app. We have open active policy, which is sort of what we call a deep policymaking gamification framework, which has been used, for example, to create a game called Make Your Constitution, which helps citizens to understand the process of constitution making. And finally, we have the Common Crawl Scanner, which we can use AI to search for different items that happened on the public internet from 2013 today. But let's focus on your priorities. And so it is in its core an innovation platform, and that innovation through ideas and then deliberation. So this story in The Economist caught my attention last year. The missing pandemic innovation boom was saying society have become worse at finding new ideas, translating them into innovations, and then using those innovations. And one of the things that there are many reasons for this, but one of the things that we suspect is not helping is that how we consume most of our media and most of our information today. And I went looking for some good ideas, and yes, there's so many great ideas on social media, but they are like really all from today. Like old ideas that tend to drop down to the bottom, and the business model of social media, and don't get me wrong, I love social media. I use it every day. We use social media to connect with citizens. Love it. But if you want to talk about generating idea, generating innovation, and doing thoughtful deliberation, it's not a really well-designed system for that. And that's mainly because of the business model. The business model is basically to sell as much advertisement as possible. And how do you do that? You prioritize new content. You prioritize that there should always be new content flowing into the platform to sell as much ads as possible. So your priorities as a solution to help deal with those problems, and basically to help to take better decisions, build up trust, but it's also combines play and civic work in a meaningful context. Taking part in digital democracy, it should be fun. It should be a joyful experience. It should not be bureaucratic or boring. Because that's just not the way that regular citizens respond to things. And the platform is quite simple in the terms of that citizens can add ideas and points for those ideas. They can sort of like and dislike things. And here you see one example. And this is a project called My Neighborhood, which we've been working on with the City of Reykjavik since 2011, where a part of the budget of the new construction in the city is basically given out to people. And then people come up with ideas on what to build, and then people can have a deliberation about what should be built. Here's another example from our partner, the Scottish Parliament. which have used our Your Priorities platform to engage citizens on many different issues. This is an example of climate change in EU. And governments are more and more seeing the benefits of actually engaging citizens in this sort of a deep, meaningful way, because politicians, like we all are, faced with ever more complex decisions. There's a lot of technological decisions. There's societies are changing in terms of people expectations are changing and so on. And it's all happening very fast. So engaging with citizens in this way really helps to, sort of move information in the places where they are, can be used in a practical way. And this is another project in Iceland on a national level where the government was working on some changes to the constitution, or trying to make some changes to the constitution, and using an online platform, it gives a wide range of citizens the opportunity to take part. And but nothing of this would be very useful if we wouldn't have constructive deliberation. And when we did our first pilot project in 2009, the Citizens Foundation, we got a small grant from the Icelandic Parliament, and we implemented a project called Shadow Parliament, where we were getting laws from the Icelandic Parliament website, and we were giving people the opportunity to comment on them. And in the first evening back there in 2009, we had, yes, some laws about fisheries policy, and we have this horrible personal argument that happens between the participants and about fisheries policy. And they were not even talking about fisheries policies anymore. They were just like, having a go at each other on our website. And I looked at my co-founder, Gunnar Grímsson, and we sort of looked at each other and said, oh, great, we created one more place on the internet for people to argue. But so from that day on, our mission was, how can we solve this? How can we have a constructive deliberation online? So what we come up with is a solution that makes it very impractical to argue. For example, you can't comment directly on other people's points. You have to write standalone counterpoints, and it encourages a rational deliberation. And we have an idea, and then we ask people, help us to come up with the pros and cons of this idea. So we are sort of nudging citizens into a more of an evaluation mode. And actually, surprisingly, many people put both points for and against the same idea. And that seems to be quite a universal sort of way of thinking about things, is that you have an idea and then you weigh the pros and cons. That seems to be in our platform, been used in 45 countries, and that seems to be sort of resonate with people. But also we have the minority and majority views have equal weight in the user interface, which helps facilitate consensus. And here's just an example. You have points for, points against, and on mobile you have the points are interleaved. So you have point for, point against, point for, point against. So it's like maybe you've heard of the thing called echo chambers online, like with social media, which means that you only see content that you agree with, because that's how some of the algorithms work. This sort of deliberation system is sort of the anti-echo chamber. We literally design the software and the website to, so you have to see the points from the other side. You can't go through, you can't keep on scrolling. They're right there always. And also, quite often we have minority viewpoints, even if there's like like hundreds or 1,000 people who support something and only few who don't support it. Often the information provided by the person who doesn't like it is important. Maybe only very few people see a critical flaw in an idea that then often can be fixed. So the idea gets better through this sort of a deliberation, because it's not about just having we should do this or we should not do this. It's also about sort of melting the idea, making it better as it sort of goes along. We have, over the years, focused quite heavily on artificial intelligence as features in our solutions, with the aim of empowering citizens democratically with artificial intelligence. And we started out almost 10 years ago with machine translations. So in the city of Reykjavik, in like 2013, 2014, we had a huge boom in tourism after certain volcanoes, made Iceland a big tourist, destination. So during those years, 2013, 2014, we had so many people, thousands of people moving to Iceland, like from the European Union area, for example, to work in the tourism industry. And they were all often here for years. So the city thought it was quite important that they could also participate in the local democracy. And obviously, we agree with that. So, for example, there's machine translations. People can have take part in any language they like. That we can mix many languages together. And back in 2014, like machine translations, like Google Translate. I mean, they were not that great, but they worked. They got like the information to people. I mean, today even Icelandic between English and Polish and many other languages is really, really good. It's almost flawless. There's like speech to text, so people can speak in their right ears, especially important for some disabled people. And then we convert the speech to text using artificial intelligence. Even if the debating system has a lot of it produces very little toxicity. We still have AI that monitors everything. So if there's a personal attack or something like that, then an administrator gets an email and there's like a zero tolerance policy for that. But that happens very rarely due to the design of the debating system. Then we're working on an AI-powered chat system, which we can sort of talk to the information, and that's going to be released next month. So when it comes to governments using your priorities or other platforms like social media to engage with citizens, and so you have the public sector on the left side of this diagram, you have social media in the middle, you have citizens on the right, and you have this ad-driven business model that has the really, really big flaw is that if you want to do something bad, if you want to influence this discussion and you want to influence this in any way, the only thing you need is like bad intentions in your head and then some money, and you can have influence. And this is has been sort of a bit of a whack-a-mole over the years. There was a big article out in The Guardian last week, I believe, about how this is still going on. I mean, people have talked about, potentially this affecting Brexit election cycle when Trump and Hillary were facing each other and so on. But with open source and non-profit business models, you can create those engagement methods quite easily, between citizens and governments. We have a cloud solution that we use, but also governments can install the open source software in their own clouds. And this creates a much more resilient mechanism for influence campaigns and for bad actors, because bad actors have no special, they can't use any money to buy influence in a solution like this. And the decentralized nature of it being that governments can, in different places, can be running different instances. It also makes it more resilient. Our platforms have got really great independent reviews recently. We got the top score of 94% in the 2022 Digital Democracy Report. We were also listed at the top of the list in the OECD guidelines for citizen participation processes, but many other great tools also on those lists. And we are certainly not the only open source sort of non-profit tools available for citizen engagement. There are many other great tools. And just a couple of projects here towards the end. So Better Reykjavik, this was our first sort of big hit, if you like, where we have now over 40,000 users that are registered. And the city uses it for participatory budgeting, like we talked about before, but many other type of projects, policy crowdsourcing, some more fund-related projects, and so on. This is sort of the front page of the participatory budgeting project, My Neighborhood, and where we have record-breaking numbers every year. This is actually from a couple of years ago. We had 1,300 ideas, and last year we had 1,700 ideas. And I really like this map of ideas. This is like the location of the ideas that citizens put in. because this sort of more or less draws out the boundaries of municipality. So there are ideas everywhere. It's so accessible. The city has used the platform for the Reykjavik City Education Policy until 2030, for example, and then allowing citizens to join the process of making the new policy in 2 stages. First, at the beginning of the process, to get sort of the high-level views, and then towards the end of the policy-making process to get some details on implementation. And this is very popular and really gave the public a great sort of interface to have real positive impact on the education policy. Obviously, education policies affect us all. And this is our Better Iceland website, where we have now 18 other municipalities, so including all the biggest municipalities in Iceland. So it's now our open solutions are now like population-wide, where over 90% of the population in Iceland has access to citizen engagement through those sort of tools. In Scottish Parliament, they have done many projects using our platforms, just depending on what's happening in the Parliament. City of Vienna uses the platform for all sorts of well, at first this project of participatory budgeting for young people. We do many projects with the World Bank. This is a Romania startup ecosystem project. This is actually our largest project in Kyrgyzstan, which we've been working on with World Bank, where hundreds of thousands of people have taken direct part and logged in to take part from thousands of villages across Kyrgyzstan, basically having real effect on how World Bank grant money is being used on the ground in those villages. And you can see some of the villages. So it's by far our sort of there's literally tens of thousands of different sort of engagement groups, as a part of this project. And there's a great case study out on peoplepowered.org website, which goes into detail about how this digital platform has boosted participation in Kyrgyzstan. And the health ministry in Kyrgyzstan also is using the platform first to fight COVID disinformation, now for general health engagement. We've done projects in Africa. This one, for example, Multi-City Challenge Africa. And the same, the pros and cons, they're always working very well. It's a project in Sudan, which was called Get Back to School after the first COVID wave, where the platform helped connect the teachers and students and parents and the government together to come up with plans on how to safely restart the school system after the first COVID wave in Sudan. So the key outcomes, basically collective innovation for a more complex world, and we have increased civic knowledge and more public acceptance. People are working together. And what have we learned? So participation must be fun. I mean, you can't, nobody just will participate if it's like it's a huge form that needs to be filled out just with text. It needs to be accessible. The participation needs to be broken into sizable units where people can understand, so when they're taking part, like you can put like a giant PDF document in front of them and expect them to give you comment on that. You want to break your information into understandable, sort of units of understanding, which is actually a great exercise in any case. And you need to reward citizens by actually using the output and from the participation. So we put a lot of emphasis on our government partners is to do the consultations and the citizen engagement at the right time, where there is actually space for citizens to be able to have an influence, where it matters, where it is helpful, where it actually does have a chance of making better decisions. And communication is key. The attention economy is quite brutal. You have to have realistic marketing budgets. So if people don't know about those projects, they won't participate. That's 100%. So this is often a challenge for government, but the benefits are great because you are, by reaching out to citizens, you are also, working with citizens, you are advertising the life of the civil sphere of life. So thank you. and I hope you took some understanding or new ideas from this. If you have any questions, always happy. You can write to me at robert@citizens.is, any questions or whatever. And yeah, that's it for me today, but I'm happy to take questions.